Nathan had been the first one in and the last one out for 3 years straight. He knew every process, solved problems before they became emergencies, covered for teammates without being asked, stayed on calls at 9 p.m. because the project needed it. He believed in the work. Then one Tuesday morning, nothing changed on the calendar. Same desk, same badge, same meetings, same manager's name in his inbox. But something inside Nathan went completely quiet. No anger, no frustration, no urge to fix anything, just silence. And that silence, that one invisible shift, cost that company more than any resignation letter ever could. Here's what nobody talks about when a good employee stops caring. It doesn't look like anything from the outside. Nathan still showed up, still completed tasks, still nodded in meetings. But the part of him that used to go beyond the contract, the part that caught the problem nobody else saw, that volunteered the idea nobody asked for, that carried the team through the hard quarters, that part was completely gone. And by the time his manager noticed, it had been gone for months. This happens every single day in workplaces across America, to the best employees, the most reliable ones, the ones companies can least afford to lose. And almost nobody in leadership understands the mechanics of how it happens, or how to stop it. You need to stay until the end of this video, because what I'm going to share in the final section is the part that nobody in a position of power will ever tell you. The part that explains not just what happened, but exactly what to do about it. Leave early, and you'll keep walking into the same situation without a map. This is strictly educational content. Not every HR professional or manager is bad. Most are navigating the same broken systems you are. This video is about understanding those systems so you can move through them smarter. Every point I make is backed by real research, real data, and real published work from organizational psychologists and workplace behavior experts. As organizational scholar Peter Drucker once wrote, "Culture eats strategy for breakfast. And when the culture stops valuing the people who carry it, the people leave before they ever walk out the door." Let's talk about exactly how that happens. Now here's something most people get dangerously backwards about workplace disengagement. They think it starts with a bad attitude. It doesn't. It starts with belief. The employees who eventually stop caring are almost never the ones who never cared. They are the ones who cared the most, who invested the most, who believed the most completely that effort would be rewarded, that competence would be recognized, that loyalty would eventually come back around. Professor Adam Grant at the Wharton School of Business, author of Give and Take, identifies what he calls givers as the employees who contribute most generously to organizational success. His research found that givers are both the highest performers and the most vulnerable to burnout when their contributions go unreciprocated. They aren't lazy. They aren't negative. They are the engine, and engines break down when they run without fuel. The first mistake good employees make is assuming the workplace has a memory. It doesn't. You remember every extra hour. The company does not. Every weekend surrendered. Every crisis absorbed before it became visible. Every fire killed quietly so the building never smelled smoke. The organization folds your sacrifice into the operating model and calls it normal. You thought you were building trust. You were actually building a bigger expectation. Research published in the Journal of Applied Psychology by Tomás Chamorro Premuzic found that organizations systematically undervalue reliable high performers because their competence makes difficulty invisible. The better you are at preventing disasters, the easier it becomes for leadership to believe there were never any disasters to prevent. Your reliability becomes a liability. And the worst part, you don't see it happening until it's already done. This is where it gets serious, because there is a specific sequence, a specific path, and once you understand it, you will recognize exactly where you are in it. Stage 1 is investment. You give everything. You go beyond the job description. You care about the outcome, not just the output. You are the person other people depend on, and you wear that with pride. Stage 2 is the signal. Something happens that doesn't add up. The person who missed every deadline gets described as creative. The political operator gets promoted. You solve a real problem and receive a compliment instead of a consequence. You raise a real concern and receive feedback about your tone. Dr. Brené Brown, researcher and author of Dare to Lead, describes this moment as a trust rupture, the point at which an employee's internal model of how the organization works collides with the reality of how it actually works. The rupture doesn't break people immediately. It creates a question. Am I actually safe to invest here? Stage 3 is the attempt. You try to fix it through legitimate channels. You raise the issue professionally. You document. You flag it to your manager. And the organization responds in its native language. We hear you. Let's circle back. Everyone is stretched right now. You're doing great. And then nothing changes. According to research by Christine Porath at Georgetown University, author of Mastering Civility, employees who raise concerns and receive no meaningful response don't simply become frustrated. They undergo a measurable shift in organizational commitment that is statistically very difficult to reverse. The brain begins to categorize the workplace as an unsafe environment for emotional investment. Not unsafe physically, unsafe emotionally. And the body responds by withdrawing the investment to protect itself. Here's what most people don't realize. The silence that follows is not peace. It is the most expensive thing a company will ever produce, and they generate it for free. When a good employee stops raising concerns, bad managers read that as resolution. The complaint stopped, so the problem must have passed. The problem never passed. The employee simply stopped offering free warnings to people who had already demonstrated they would not act on them. Dr. Amy Edmondson at Harvard Business School, author of The Fearless Organization, has spent decades researching what she calls psychological safety. Her findings are precise. When employees experience repeated instances of speaking up and being ignored or penalized, they enter what she calls a silent spiral. They stop contributing information. They stop flagging risk. They perform compliance while withdrawing judgment. And here is the dangerous part of that silent spiral. The problems the employee was tracking, the risks they were quietly managing, the early signals they were catching, those problems don't disappear when the employee stops mentioning them. They accumulate, they compound, and months later they detonate exactly as predicted. And the same manager who waved the employee off looks around the room and asks why nobody spoke up. They spoke up. They have the emails to prove it. They simply stopped repeating themselves to someone who had already made clear the cost of listening was too high. Now here's where things shift. The final straw is almost never dramatic. This is one of the most important things to understand about this process. It rarely ends with a screaming match. It rarely ends with tears in the parking lot or a resignation letter slammed on a desk. It ends with something small. You carry the team all year and get asked to train the person promoted over you. Your manager repeats your idea in a meeting 6 weeks after dismissing it, and the room calls it vision. Leadership responds to months of overload with a pizza party and a note about maintaining positive energy. Or you simply do the math one quiet afternoon and realize the reward for saving the day is being expected to save every day, forever, for free, and the switch flips. Research from Gallup's State of the Global Workplace report, one of the most comprehensive ongoing studies of employee engagement ever conducted, found that only 32% of U.S. employees are actively engaged at work. The remaining 68% fall into two categories: disengaged, doing the minimum, and actively disengaged, working against the organization's interests. What Gallup's research also found is that the transition from engaged to disengaged is almost never sudden. It is a slow bleed, a series of small moments, each one individually manageable, that accumulate over months until the weight becomes unbearable. And the tragedy is not just what the employee loses. It's what the organization loses without ever knowing it had it. Now let's talk about something deeper, something that separates the employees who survive this moment strategically from the ones who let it damage them. Because here is the truth that most people in this situation get dangerously wrong. When the caring stops, The temptation is to let the standards drop with it. Don't. Your standards belong to you. They will outlive this job. The overcaring ends. The excellence stays. Because the excellence is not for them. It never was. It's for your reputation, your references, your next opportunity, your own sense of who you are when you walk out of any building for the last time. What ends is the self-sacrifice inside a system that already showed you self-sacrifice, is its business model. Professor Herminia Ibarra at London Business School, author of Act Like a Leader, Think Like a Leader, writes extensively about what she calls identity workspaces, the professional environments that either expand or diminish how we see ourselves. Her research found that employees who conflate their identity with a single organization are the most devastated when that organization fails to reciprocate their investment. Separate the job from your identity. It is something you do for money, and that is the only soul it deserves. Stop carrying problems that live above your pay grade. If leadership owns the decision, leadership owns the consequence. Document your workload, your instructions, your warnings. Redirect the energy that used to go into trying to change what you cannot change into your resume, your skills, your network, your exit, your options. Move more intelligently. Care less emotionally. A workplace can damage your motivation. Do not hand it your judgment to. Here's the part I told you to wait for. The real secret. The day a good employee stops caring is not the day they give up. It is the day they finally see clearly. Everything they were told about how the workplace works. The invisible rules about loyalty and reward, effort and recognition, fairness and consequence. Those rules were never the actual operating system. They were the story the organization told to get maximum output from minimum investment. And the day that becomes undeniable, the day the evidence finally accumulates past the point of rationalizing, is not a failure. It is information. What you do with that information is what separates the people who move forward powerfully from the ones who stay stuck in the anger and the disappointment. As organizational psychologist Edgar Schein, author of Organizational Culture and Leadership, wrote after decades of research into how institutions actually function, the culture of any organization is shaped by the worst behavior the leader is willing to tolerate. You are not the worst behavior. You are the person who finally stopped tolerating it internally. That is not disengagement. That is discernment. And discernment, pointed outward at your next move, instead of inward at your resentment, is one of the most powerful professional assets you will ever develop. Walk into tomorrow with your standards intact, your skills sharp, your documentation complete, your network active, your identity separate from an institution that was never designed to carry it. The place that kept proving it would give you nothing back is finally receiving exactly what it earned. And you, for the first time in a long time, are free to invest somewhere that will actually return the interest. As Maya Angelou once said, when someone shows you who they are, believe them the first time. Your workplace showed you. Now it's your turn to show yourself what comes next. If this video put language to something you've been feeling but couldn't name, hit like right now. It costs you nothing, and it reaches someone sitting at that same desk wondering if it's just them. It's not just them. Subscribe if you want more honest, research-backed workplace strategy that treats you like the intelligent professional you are. Drop your moment in the comments, the specific thing that flipped the switch for you. I read every single one, and your story might become the next video. You came here because something at work stopped feeling the way it used to. Now you understand exactly why, and exactly what to do next. Go protect yourself.